Opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Wow. Welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the deep, deep South. Down in Mississippi, where I believe that the air is just a little bit cleaner and the grass is just a little bit greener. Or we have our problems. We have a history that we're not proud of. But yet, it's less than 3 million people in the state of Mississippi. I can drive for days and not see anyone. I recently was in Chicago, and every time I turned around, I bumped into somebody. I could not wait to get back to Mississippi. And like most African Americans, as soon as I graduated from college, I left Mississippi. And people ask me all of the time, why did you come back? And I came back because this was the legacy of my father and his father that had been in this fight for so long to try to improve the conditions of our people. And so it was my obligation to return to continue the fight. And that's what we do here in this studio. Now, we're broadcasting live. We're being seen on YouTube TV, on Roku TV, on Facebook, and on WeBelieveDigital.com, our very own platform, where all shows are being archived so that your grandchildren will be able to pull this back up and see exactly what the topics were and the discussions were about 20, 30 years from today. Now, you can call in this evening and join the discussion at 800-492-5186. As always, I have with me my co-host, the renowned orator and author, Dr. Eldridge Henderson. Dr. Henderson, how have you been?
I'm doing fine, sir, and have been doing fine for the last 60 years.
You had a great show last night.
Thank you.
On WMPR radio station.
Thank you. Well, it's only good, sir, because you were there.
Well, I was honored to be on the show with you last night, and we covered a lot of good topics that I think we'll continue some of that dialogue this evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special treat this afternoon. We have a good friend of mine, a personal friend of mine, the former mayor of the city of Jackson. And once you are mayor of the city of Jackson, everybody just calls you mayor. We don't call you former, we just call you mayor. That becomes your handle for life. In the studio with us this evening, we have Mayor Tony Yarber. How are you, sir?
Mr. Garrett, I'm great. It's always good to be around you, man. Always, always.
It's been my pleasure to be around you for some time now, and I've always admired you as a person. And you're probably one of the best speakers. Dr. Henderson, not to slight you in any way, but you're probably one of the best speakers that I've heard, Mayor. The times that you've engaged the audience, you just have a gift for that.
I appreciate that. Well, I just try to be like Dr. Henderson and just say it like it is. I just say it how I feel it. I remember one time I heard Bishop Eddie Long say, I just want to minister from what's in my spirit. So I just try to speak about what's in my heart, only stuff I know about.
Good. Tell the audience and tell the world exactly a little bit about Tony Yarber, where you come from, and what your parents did, and you know what your high points and low points are this far on your journey.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Mr. Garrett, I ran my first mayoral campaign with the idea that I was just everyday people, and I believe that I still believe that I'm just everyday people. Grew up in subdivision number 2, got married young, moved out to South Jackson, which was just a little more polished version of subdivision number 2. Went to the University of Southern Mississippi, where I ended up. I started out as a biology pre-med major. Ended up being an elementary education teacher. Now I am fully engaged in educational consulting, doing some work around the state with men like Dr. Earl Watkins, Dr. Robert Mack, and others. And so to this point, I think I have arrived at a place in my life now where I can look back and say, okay, I'm all right. I'm good. I'm settled. It's a lot of things as a younger man that I thought that I needed and wanted, and but now, as I guess a middle-aged man, Dr. Henderson, things now have slowed down a lot. My perspective about a lot of things has changed a lot, and so. I grew up with a daddy who did construction work, which is probably one of the first places I heard the name Socrates Garrett from my daddy. My daddy was a heavy equipment operator, worked 9 months hard through the year, and then had to save money for the hard months of winter. And my mama was a worker at GM. She also had a 2-chair salon. So I've always believed that we were just everyday people.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great background. Dr. Henderson, share with us a little bit about your background. You're old enough now and have seen things that others have not seen. Mm. You hear things that few people can hear. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you've done thus far.
Thank you. Well, I said once on this show that I was very fortunate to be born in the Delta for a short period back in the 1940s, and they moved from the Delta to Hinds County, Mississippi, a few days after I was born, and I was very fortunate to be raised on a plantation for the first 17 years of my life. I thought it was real good to have food, clothing, shelter, free food, free clothing, free shelter, and a job that would give me an opportunity to work from 10 to 16 hours a day. Mm. All of that was free. Anytime we needed extra food, we could go to the company store and get it. My dad's mule might die. The next morning, he'll go to the barn and get a free mule. And the plantation owner was very nice to all of his people. He'll just write it on the book and put a price on it. And at the end of the farm season, you had to go and settle. And my dad and others would get in a long line, and they would call you. Cleopas, Robert Johnson, you go in. Here is what you owe us. This is what you produced. Now the balance is $200. Now you have a balance of $200, and before you leave, you tell him, well, I need food and clothing, and I need a little money for Christmas. He said, well, I'm going to give you $100. And that's starting the next year. So now you owe $300 at settlement. And we lived through that for 17 years. Wow. And after that period, after walking to school for 8 years, 5 miles each way, my dad couldn't take me to school, nor the others, because they were leaving home at 5:30 every day. Most of the men in that area, in that country area, would leave about 5:30 because they had jobs in Jackson, Yazoo City, all over the place, wherever they could find a job. And every day, the white school bus will pass us, and I've been telling this story, a true story, for many years, and the kids will look at us, call us niggers and stuff, throw things out of the window, and every time it rained, the driver would find a puddle to run into the puddle, and whether summer, winter, whatever, and mud would just get all over us. And when I got to school, we had to go to the heater and dry off. We didn't have preheat. We didn't have outdoors toilets. We just had a hole within a little house. And that's where the boys and girls went at different times. We didn't have cafeterias. We would take a wonderful country biscuit sandwich with old piece of bacon in there. And during the wintertime, you had a little hole in the wall where you could put your lunch. And you would go and put your lunch there, go back, and someone will have been real nice to you. They go in your sandwich, take the meat out, and leave the bread. That happened a lot of times, that kind of thing. Now, I lived through that for 8 years. Now, to make this thing short, after 8 years, Mr. Socrates and Mayor Yarber, I had an opportunity to get a house on the plantation. When you finished 8th grade back in that time, you could start working on the plantation if you didn't have additional educational opportunities or didn't want to do any further. So we didn't have any high school that I could attend in Hinds County at the time because we were living in the rural area. So I had talked to the here. He had promised me a house, and he had a job for me making $2 a day. Man, I thought that was significant. I'd never made $2 a day. And he said, you can drive the tractor, bale hay, and fix the fence. And say, I'll pay you every Friday. And he said, boy, if you need a car, you can go down to Raymond, Mississippi. We have a used car lot down there, and you can get a car. I said, a car? He said, yes, boy. So you can get a car, and you can pay for that out of your check. $2 a day now. $2 a day. And that's what I had planned to do. And for some reason, I guess it was luck or the Lord or the white folks in Hinds County decided we needed a school in the rural area, and they created a little school called Sumner Hill High School. And at 8th grade, with nowhere to go but a job working on the plantation, they opened up that rural school. It was in Hinds County then. It wasn't in the city of Clinton. And that gave me an opportunity to enroll in 9th grade. And to make this thing brief, I eventually ended up getting out of high school, attended a junior college, and messed around and ended up with a wonderful opportunity to join the military. I got drafted. And before I could sneeze, they had me down at Fort Polk, Louisiana, sent me to Georgia to get some communication training, and then put me in Vietnam. I went in May, and I was in Vietnam in September of that same year. And I had another great experience. They tried to kill me and others every day for 11 months, 22 days, 4 hours and 6 minutes. I mean, every day. If they didn't get us in the day, we would tell ourselves, well, they're going to get us tonight. Because they were bombing and running up, trying to overrun you. You had to shoot them, at night, coming over the fence. And for some reason, I was lucky or blessed. I didn't get a scratch on me during that time. And a lot of the guys got shot, wounded. Some disappeared, missing in action. And here, Eldridge Henderson from Hinds County, specifically Bolton, Mississippi, born on a plantation, in the Army, didn't get killed, and I was over there fighting Mayor Yarber for one reason, to get back to Mississippi so I could vote. When I went into the war, I couldn't even vote. We had to go to the Masonic Temple in Jackson, Mississippi, and get with Mayor Evers and his group and register. And the Secret Service or someone would put your registration application in a box and take it to the county courthouse, because when blacks will go down there, they beat you to death, put hoses and dogs on you, run over you with horses, call you every name in the world, and nobody did anything about it. And the bad part about it is the FBI, we found out later, would always be monitoring those activities and never did a thing about it. And later on, as I conclude this short story, I got lucky after the military and had a chance to go to college. I wasn't fortunate like you. You say you went to Mississippi State or somewhere like that?
Southern Miss.
Southern Miss. I went to the great Jackson State University, and they felt sorry for me. They took this old veteran, and I decided I would work and work and work and retire when I die. And I'm still kicking, sir. That's my story.
Dr. Henderson, it's such a passionate story. I want our viewers out there to know that the man is speaking about events that he lived and he experienced here in Mississippi. And most of you out there can identify it, because the Great Migration occurred and a few folks stayed in Mississippi. And Dr. Henderson, we salute you and we honor you for your service for this country in the military. And we hope that one day you will be a full first-class citizen.
What day do you think that's going to be, Mr. Socrates?
I don't know what day it's going to be, but I hope that one day you will just be a full first-class citizen. That's all James Meredith said that he really wanted. Just to be a full first-class citizens in Mississippi.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. But it's very difficult for a black man in America and especially in Mississippi, in the South, or anywhere in the world, to be a full citizen with respect. Now, we are alleged to be citizens of the United States, but if you look at the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the state and Supreme Court decisions, every piece of legislation they pass, every statute, every codified law they put together, always said that the black man has no rights anyone in America should respect. Now, that's a fact. Generally, summarizing that, that's what it says. As of today, July the 8th, 2022. Laws are always set up for black folks to be changed every year.
Hold your point. Tony.
Yes, sir.
Doc talks about a time for his generation that was significantly different than your time growing up in Mississippi. Many of us, my age and Doc's age, feel that we lost your generation, that integration was probably looking backwards, you know, Monday morning quarterback, and we're thinking that integration probably was not a good thing because we lost our children, you being our child. And so your generation does not seem to have the loyalty to the legacy that Doc just articulated. They're not committed and tied to it in any way. Are we mischaracterizing the generation?
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I've said for years that I think one of the biggest issues that impacted the black community was integration. I think that when integration happened, that it took us out of a place where the actual village was able to take care of us. I also think that there's a disconnect from the legacy because there's also a disconnect from the work. So it's hard for people to be connected to something that they're not vested in. So if you go out, I mean, I value this studio, I value what you've done here, but because I didn't invest anything into this, me having the same kind of passion about the legacy is going to be different than you having the same passion about this. And what I've seen, particularly from my peers, is a few things. Number one, we have no real understanding of history, whether that be U.S. history or black history. We have no real understanding of when cultural shifts happen. I'm still struggling right now with black folks who trying to get Trump reelected. I don't understand that. It makes no sense to me. But when I consider history, they'll use things, for example, like I've been hearing a lot of black folks, young black folk, my age, millennial age, who are saying stuff like, well, black folks shouldn't be loyal to the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party, they'll go into the history of the Democratic Party without actually addressing the history of the Democratic Party. And they'll say the Republican Party is the party of Lincoln, and they freed the slaves. And I'm trying to tell them, but y'all missing a really important point in history that happened in the 1960s with the Dixiecrats. So y'all are trying to give credit to a party that simply had a switch where KKK were a part of the Southern Democrats. They just simply went to the Republican Party. That disconnect, I think, is really damaging us. Now, I always used to tell my mama, I used to always say, now, mama, you know, y'all got something to do with us being the way that we are. And that's not a knock, because Mr. Garrett, what y'all wanted to do was make sure that we didn't have to go through some of the stuff y'all went through. What y'all wanted to do is make sure that we didn't have to walk 5 miles, get spit on and talked about. But what happened when we got shielded from all that, we got protected from all of that, then we don't even know what to be offended by anymore. We don't even know when to get mad with stuff that white folks are doing. We don't know when to be mad with ourselves about things that we are perpetuating for white folks to be able to latch on to and take to another degrading place. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that disconnect has become even further between you guys, your generation, and my children's generation, and that's tough.
Let me ask you the question, because, you know, I came back to Mississippi to continue the legacy of my father. Mm-hmm. But children that don't have a father in the home, in their lives, that legacy, that connection is lost.
Yep. Absolutely.
And so we're going to talk about that and the impact that it's having on young African American males, especially in Jackson, Mississippi, where we're now considered to be the #1 murder capital of the world.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to go to a station break, and we're going to continue the dialogue with Tony Yarber and Eldridge Henderson. We're being broadcast all over the world in 139 countries. You can call in and join our conversation at 800-492-5186. You can see us on YouTube, on Roku TV, on WeBelieveDigital.com. We need your support. We need you to advertise. We need you to come in and have your own podcast shows. We're telling an inexpensive plan that will allow any individual that wants to get in this studio will be able to afford it. Now stay tuned. We're going to a break and we'll be right back.
SGECOVIDsolutions.com is paving the way forward for a safer city government delivering cutting-edge biosecurity and biosafety protocols developed internationally by top virologists and scientists using an all-natural cleaning solution, killing COVID-19 on contact like no other product on the international market. For more information, please call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at SGECOVIDsolutions.com. Let SGECOVIDsolutions.com provide innovative rapid facilities testing and world-class state-of-the-art biorisk safety protocols for all of your coronavirus needs. Call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at SGECOVIDsolutions.com.
Do you have something to say? Do you want your voice heard? Join the We Believe Global lineup. Be the star of your own show. For more info, call 800-492-5186, option number 1, or visit online at WeBelieve.global.
We're back live. We're broadcasting from Jackson, Mississippi, WeBelieveDigital.com. We want you to join our conversation by calling 800-492-5186. As I said earlier, we're being seen all over the world. We run the analytics, and we have as many viewers in New York as we do in Georgia and as we do in several other states. We have viewers in China, have viewers in Vietnam, Dr. Henderson.
Good.
So we have viewers all over the world. And we're going to be discussing some difficult subjects. And one of those that we had just broached is the fact that Jackson, Mississippi is now the #1 murder capital of the world. I said of the world. And most of this crime is being committed by young African American men under the age of 18 years old.
Yep.
Mayor, what is going on in the African American community? You've worked from your degree in education and worked with young black males all across this state and this country. What is going on with our children?
It's about values. It's about if you sit down. I mean, I work with these children every day of the week. All right, so I've got a martial arts studio. I'm in the summertime. I'm working in summer camps, and I've been working with a unique age group that I've not worked with before, and that's that middle school, junior high group, 12 to 14 years old. And I'm gonna be honest with you. There are things that you value that Mr. Henderson or Dr. Henderson value that these children don't value anymore. And because there's this disconnect in values, then when we're talking about sanctity of life, they're talking about respect. And so that respect that they believe that they're garnering from the activities that they're participating in, it trumps the sanctity of life. Now, I know Dr. Henderson's gonna want to jump in here in a minute, because then that speaks to morality. And who are the brokers of morality in the black community? It's always been, or supposed to have been, the black church.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes, sir.
He brought up the black church.
But I'm glad he did, because he is a minister.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm just going to let you deal with the black church in your own way.
Well, to give you a brief history of the black church in America, and especially in the South, those churches, and I say those churches because there are all kinds of different churches. In Mississippi, you have about 8 different black denominations that are alleging to be preparing people to go to heaven when they die. The churches in Mississippi and the South have a strong history of membership development and support. During my early years, the church had insurance companies, barrier policies. We had movie theaters that the young people could go to from the church. We had one or two banks and credit unions right here in Hinds County. We had all kind of professional people right around Jackson State University on both sides of the street from the school downtown. All of that has disappeared. 99% has disappeared. The school is sitting there, and on both sides of the streets, you have nothing. Nothing. There's one fire station of any significance down there, and others are gone. And all that happened because of several reasons. One, because black people have left the church because the ministers don't participate, nor do they support or endorse education and training as they did in the early days during segregation. So we had to do something for ourselves. Now with integration, which is nothing but integration versus segregation all at the same time, the black folks like Mayor Yarber that integrated or went to these so-called white schools were not going to be invited to be in the fraternities and sororities. Now, they would get an opportunity to play basketball or football and get a little respect. Most of them did not even think that they were going to get honors in the academic classes, even if they were honor students. But they always had enough sense, I'm talking about the leaders of these schools, to identify one or two blacks out of each class.
The token.
That's right, and tell him or her, you are a significant black.
Yep.
You're important. We're going to support you, but you have to learn our education system. You have to learn to despise yourself. You have to learn to be anti-black. And if you do, we'll give you a job in local government or state government. We'll let you join our church even, but you can't be in a leadership position. We might let you join the choir if you're in the Old Miss choral group. Might. That's the thing that caused a lot of black people to suffer, sir. This false integration has been one of the greatest negatives in the history of America.
Well, now, Doc, let's talk about the church for a minute, because I think that there is a separation of state and church.
You don't have to say anything else. There's no such thing as separation of church and state. No such thing. Even the money has reference to God. Every time the legislature, the city council, or the board of supervisors start a meeting at the beginning of the session, they call in one of these preachers to open it up with a prayer. When they close it with a prayer. Whenever there's a major need to do something in the community to brainwash the people and pretend that the politicians are doing something, they call that favorite preacher and say, I want to have a meeting in your church. And they got about 5 or 6 in every community. They call on those wonderful ministers, not God-centered ministers. They are in love with the politicians, and they say, yes, you can meet at my church.
Now, Doc, I said that there was a separation of state even back in the day when the question was asked of Jesus about the taxes of Julius Caesar. And his response was, give to Caesar those things that belong to Caesar, and give to God those things that belong to God. They are separated.
Well, now
one didn't have anything to do with the other. And so I think that we let our government off of the hook when we focus so much on the preachers and their inability to get solutions to fix our problems.
Let me jump in, because
Tony, before you jump in, let's take this call.
Sure,
grab your headset there, and let's see where yours are. Right here.
I got them.
You got them? Okay.
Yep.
Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. How y'all doing tonight?
Doing good.
I got one question. I know you can't put no blame about our water treatment plant, our water problems in Jackson on one mayor, like the current mayor or the former mayors. You know, it goes always back to like like back to their dance days. My thing is, since O.B. Curtis was built in the late 1980s, early 1990s, when we build another one to help O.B. Curtis one, and probably to close the one down on Savannah Road and they call the waterway curve, to replace them, because them like that's older than O.B. Curtis. So how come we want to use the land at the old Lake Haco and turn that to like a water treatment place or something like that, since the power plant closed down and shut it down and moved it away? So, so we're going to do with the old Lake Haco place, and we're going to build a new water treatment place in Jackson. I know they just keep saying they don't have the money, but yeah, we like I said, we the highest tax in the state, but we the highest tax county in the state, but yet we don't know where our money going. Where is our money? The Simmons case, that money came and gone. Lord made $30 million off that. So, what can we do to solve our water plant, our water issues in Jackson? We Western Flint, Michigan.
Caller, we thank you for your question. We're going to respond to it, but appreciate your call.
Thank you.
Tony, the caller has some concerns, and I have the same concerns, and I think we were getting into it when we separate states. The issue of Jackson's water crisis, and he went back as far as Harvey Johnson, etc. Are you able to speak on what you know about how Jackson got in this situation?
Well, the short answer is deferred maintenance. I remember having a conversation with Mayor Danks probably 5 or 6 years ago. We had dinner one day, sat down, lunch, and we sat down and just talked about the history of the city. And I remember something he said to me. He said, every mayor has their own set of priorities. And he said at that time, when he was mayor, he said that infrastructure wasn't the priority, that economic development was. And that the idea of maintenance plans and things like that, they just weren't on the radar. And I get that. I understand that. But over time, it's just simply been neglect. Now, turn the corner. My personal opinion, I think that the only way the city is going to be able to get out of this is they're going to have to really start considering this very taboo word, and I'm not in politics anymore, so I can say this kind of stuff. But at some point, we're going to have to really start thinking about public-private partnerships, because what public-private partnerships offer is an opportunity for the city to get flushed with money in order to go on and do a big overhaul of the system. The last plant that we had built, which was a wastewater treatment plant, is one over in Presidential Hills. It's the last time we had one built, and it's not a huge treatment plant either. But we're going to have to figure out, because otherwise we're going to lose control of all of this stuff. Because the more that it appears, and well, it doesn't matter how it seems, but the more that it appears that there is incompetence in the room on this stuff, then the more there are going to be backroom deals brokered up there on that Capitol in Jackson. So we're going to have to start considering things that's going to bring money into the city. Versus looking at how do we spend $3 million of the $11 million that comes in from the 1%, or how do we get the capital improvement district money to make sense where we actually see those improvements happening in and around the Capitol complex area. But until that kind of stuff happens, then we're going to continue to see this sharecropping idea, where every year it seems like we owe more money than we did last year, but it seems like last year we paid more money to get some fits, but we still $100 more in the hole this January.
Right. In a backward situation, Dr. Henderson, your comments on the subject matter of how Jackson got in this situation.
Well, I can agree with the mayor. It was because of neglect initially. And one of the other problems that developed, you talked about Mayor Danks. After a while, Mayor Danks was no longer the mayor.
Right.
You ended up with a black mayor over and over and over for the last probably 15 or 20 years. So folks like Mayor Danks and his supporters are not interested in developing Jackson's infrastructure anymore. They don't want the black mayors to, as we say in my part of the country, to shine and look like they are competent. And those people that are special interest advocates, like the mayor and his supporters, are not going to go and get with the corporate entities and get 40, 50, 75 million dollars together and build a new water plant. They're not going to do that, but what they are going to do, use that money you talked about, and they going to build, expand, and enhance North Jackson and Northeast Jackson. Because there are some rumors out there, and the mayor knows it, that some people are already saying, if we can get a white mayor during the next election, we're going to find us a good black person to run for 4 years, and at the same time, we are going to work with the legislature, and we are going to do like Byram and some of the other areas. We're going to create a new city in Hinds County, encompassing North Jackson and Northeast Jackson. We're going to build our own water structure. We're going to use our infrastructure with monies that we get from the federal government and the legislature and have new facilities, and let the old Jackson, which is Northwest Jackson and South Jackson, be on their own. And we still not going to give them any funds from the federal government and the legislature and have new facilities.
Has a poverty rate that's
the
greater
old
than
Jackson,
50%.
which is that's correct, Northwest Jackson and South Jackson.
If that were to occur, if the Northeast Jackson removes itself from Southwest Jackson, black people don't have a chance of surviving or succeeding based upon the economic condition that they're in.
That's true.
Poverty rate in the state of Mississippi from black and brown is greater than 50% in the entire state. And yet, Dr. Henderson, the state of Mississippi refused to expand Medicaid when Medicaid would, for every dollar that we spend on Medicaid, would bring $5.43 back to the state of Mississippi, and this state refuses to expand Medicaid because it's called Obamacare. Dr. Henderson, we're the poorest state in the nation. We're last in every major category. So to hear you say that the solution is for them to separate themselves and push black folk into a certain segment of our population is, in my opinion, that's genocide. That is absolute elimination of the black race in America, in these urban cities, if that were to happen.
Did I tell you before about the documents, the constitutions and Declaration of Independence and other court mandates? It says basically that black people are considered an outcast in Mississippi, in the South, and in the nation. They are considered a member of a permanent underclass, and we're going to keep it that way because black folks are not doing the things they need to do to look out for their interests. They won't pool their resources. They spend more money on worthless items, consumer goods, than buying themselves land, other properties, starting businesses, working with the churches so they can train the members in the church, putting memorandum of understanding together with the public schools, the community colleges and senior colleges, where they can train those church students in areas that the church can't afford. You have to train your own new mayors, your own members of the legislature, your own judges, and you start in the church schools because the public schools are not set up for that. Church schools, public schools that is, are controlled by European Americans, and they have a curriculum that is designed to promote their interests and their welfare and not the welfare of what I call the dark-skinned minorities, which means the black folks, black Hispanics, colored-type Hispanics, and other minorities in Mississippi. They are not going to get anywhere unless we decide to create our own agenda and have what I call a prioritized corrective action plan with a time list and a timeline and a project manager in 5 areas of activity. First one, education and training, religion, leadership, economic development, and politics. If black folks control those 5 areas of activity from birth to death, starting on the local level, where they are, with what they have, and use their own leaders, things will start changing in 30, 60, 90 days.
Tony, the state of Mississippi recently passed laws that says that critical race theory won't be taught in our school systems.
Yeah.
What was the state trying to say?
Well, first of all, let me, just in terms of a wide shot, I want you to think about the kinds of things that Republican-run governors and legislators are doing around the country versus the things that Democratic run. You look at Gavin Newsom in California. They just invested over $100 million in bringing down the cost of insulin in their state, right? Well, you go to places like Mississippi. What's on the what did Republicans accomplish this year? We kept CRT from happening. All right. They further, and I'm going to use this term, raped black folks from their ability to be able to cast safe votes. Okay. Well, CRT comes along, and I'm in school buildings 4 days a week, and CRT comes along, and teachers are saying, "What? What y'all talking about? We can't even teach civics. We can't even teach social studies because high stakes testing has us drilling and killing, teaching national standards that Doc just talked about. We don't even have time. If we wanted to do a real sound teaching on black history, we couldn't even do it because the time isn't there." So what I'm literally saying is 2 things. Number one is that the priority of the state's legislature is on something. They're trying to prevent something that ain't even happening. That's number one. But number 2, it shines and it sheds a light on how the state views education in the state of Mississippi. Because if you really wanted to do something, and they did something good by passing that teacher pay raise, $5,000. However, what you have not done yet is you have not addressed the fact that it does not matter what we've done, all of the changes, all of those things that happen in the state, we're still struggling and scraping the bottom when it comes to how we're performing nationally. Every now and then we'll have a spike where Mississippi students do real good, but because there's no consistency, that trend isn't going upward, we don't see that data point going up, then we don't even get an opportunity to shout victory over the fact that children are actually learning.
You're watching Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting from Jackson, Mississippi. And we're talking about a lot of issues and a lot of problems that we have. And we're going to have to identify the problems and put them on the table. Mm-hmm. You cannot deal with it. You cannot come up with solutions until you admit that you have a problem. The state of Mississippi, our leadership, both black and white, does not admit that we have a problem, and therefore we're not dealing with the issues. The state of Mississippi sends $1 to Washington, D.C., and for every dollar we send, we receive $3 back. We are a welfare state,
yeah,
and we have the hypocrisy to say that we won't expand Medicaid. You just can't have it both ways. If you remove welfare benefits from the state of Mississippi, the state would bankrupt in 90 days. Take food stamps out of it and all of the programs out of Mississippi, and the entire state would bankrupt in 90 days. We're going to talk about the solutions to some of these problems. We don't have enough time to get into it this evening, but join us next week as we continue this conversation and talk about how we're going to get in this situation that we're in. I want to give my guests the opportunity to have their closing remarks, and Tony, we'll start with you.
Well, I always enjoy being here with you, Mr. Garrett, and Dr. Henderson. I'm always intrigued when you start talking about stuff that I think I should have known about already. And I think that we're in a real unique place in time, and I'm sure that you brothers have been here for a lot longer than me. You probably feel the same way. That we're in a real unique place, and it's almost scary, because when you look around, and we've talked about all these issues, there seems to be more issues right now than there are real practical solutions that we can implement immediately. So I just want to encourage folks that if this thing is going to get better, then all hands got to be on deck. We got to have shows like this. We have to have intellectuals like this. We have to have folks who are out there in the community actually galvanizing, bringing people together, reinstituting the ideas and the thoughts of your Huey P. Newtons and these brothers who understood what it meant to not only, because in the sub, my granddad and them, they protected the sub. You ain't just coming there acting no fool. We ain't need police in the sub. Our grandparents, they were the police. And until we go back to that kind of attitude and mentality, then I believe that we'll continue to be in this place where we are frustrated and really not excited about getting up and going out into the world every day.
The frustration level is real high. I know I'm frustrated. Dr. Henderson, your closing remarks.
Well, briefly, sir, we don't have but 8 years as black people to get these things together where we will be considered a positive family, a positive group, and a positive community. We have no community. Our family is already dysfunctional, and you don't have enough unifying forces to make things change. But there's two things that can happen, and you'll see a positive movement in 30 days. The churches and community organizations get together, address their problem. They don't need no 2-year study to find out what the problems are. And then let the churches on a denominational basis set up private and church schools, get the money from the state, that's already been authorized by the legislature, teach their own children reading, writing, math, and communication. Do a memorandum of understanding with the public schools, as I said earlier, where the boys and girls can go and play sports if they choose. But the church schools got to teach chess, tennis, soccer, but not of that football and basketball.
Yeah.
They don't want to do that. And they got to teach them IT. They have to teach that. And then they're going to have to teach the students their ability, and their job is to defend their own communities. That's why I believe in the Second Amendment. You got to defend yourself.
Good. Well, I tell you, it's been a great show. We're going to look forward to Mayor Yarber having his own podcast show that's coming soon. We look forward to him getting back into the game fully. We know that he's in the education arena now, but as he said, we need all hands on deck. We need his leadership, his understanding, his experience. As he said earlier, sometimes we don't know exactly what to do, but we know what not to do. And so we need to bring all of that experience and that expertise back to the table to help solve some of these problems. Until next week, have a great, great weekend, and good night.
All right.
Good stuff.
Yes, sir.
Good stuff.
Advertise on WeBelieve.global, a brand new digital media platform. Share your brand with our audience on our mini global live stream TV broadcast and over the radio. For more info, visit WeBelieve.global or call 800-492-5186